Sorry for that delay. I was in the back making some tea. I was like, oh, it's my turn. It is so good to be with you all this morning. I've learned so much from so many of you in this room and in this space, from your incredible pastor, Katarina, to my good friend Frank, Bert, Rob. You as a community have taught me so much about what it means to be the physical conduit of God's love, mercy, justice, and peace out in the community. I almost feel like an honorary Mennonite. Is that a thing? All right. It's a thing now. So thank you, beloved, for opening your space for me this morning. Why don't we all stand to our feet and just begin by honoring our bodies. If you're anything like me, these days you're a hot mess on a good day. If that's you, don't raise your hand, just blink, just blink. Okay, thank you. All right, I see some blinks. So let us just start by honoring our bodies and not bypassing our bodies. So just drop your shoulders, allow your shoulders to surrender to gravity. Our shoulders naturally want to fall towards the floor, and a lot of times when we're anxious and stressed, our shoulders bunch up towards the ears. So just allow your shoulders to surrender to gravity. Imagine that beneath the floor, inside the earth, there is a magnet pulling your shoulders towards the floor. There actually is. And just surrender to that force now. And then just turn your neck as far as you can to the left. Oh, one good turn and stretch. Now turn as far as you can to the right. One good turn and stretch. Oh, that feels good. All right, now just reach those arms up towards the sky. All right, now shake, shake, shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. All right, bring it back down. And now we're going to hum a few times. Humming stimulates the vagus nerve, not the casino, but the vagus nerve, the soul nerve, I like to call it the everything's going to be okay, the we gonna be all right nerve in the body. So let's take a deep breath in and hum it out. One more time, a deep breath in through the nose. God, would you hear our prayer this morning? In the name of the great healer, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Now, before you sit down, just look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, thanks for doing that with me. Okay, find another neighbor because that neighbor's still asleep, and say, new neighbor, thanks for doing that with me. Protect black women. Those were the words proudly displayed across my brand new t-shirt. And letters so bold, I could feel their imprint pressed against my skin. Protect black women. Words that I believed in, that I still believe in, and I hope others can come to believe in. Because the world so often and so obviously does not protect black women. The words were so powerful and salient that this t-shirt probably wore me just as much as I wore it. So it should not have surprised me in the summer of 2020, as I drove down a busy street not too far from here, that I should come across none other than, wait for it, a black woman in need of protection. With the afternoon traffic indifferently passing by, there she stood on the sidewalk as a man twice her size towered over her, berating her. and appearing at any moment ready and capable to do physical harm to her. Protect black women. As it became my car's turn to pass by with indifference, I pulled over. And beloved, I wish this was the part of the story where I tell you that I got out of the car and stood between this man and the worst of his intentions. But it's the part of the story where though I didn't pass by, I also didn't get out of the car. I stayed in the car, and I honked the horn as loud as I possibly could in order to break the bubble that they seemed to be trapped inside of. And sure enough, this man turned his head towards me with a look of shock and surprise, as if he suddenly remembered where he was, that this indeed was Los Angeles, and it indeed was broad daylight. And he walked away. I asked the young lady if she was okay and if she needed a ride to somewhere safe, as if it were somehow obvious that I, a man, was someone safe. She declined. And a few moments later, the man came back, this time in a car with several other people inside. And he screamed for her to get inside the car. She did. They drove away. I drove away. Protect black women. Sadly, beloved, that's the end of the story. And I share it because I wonder all the time what would have happened to me if I'd gotten out of the car and put my body on the line. And I wonder even more so the possibility of what may have happened to her as a result of me not getting out of the car and putting my body on the line. For as Dr. King once said, as he reflected on the story of the Good Samaritan, instead of asking the question, what will happen to me if I stop to help this man, we must reverse the question and ask, if I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? And yes, staying in the car, as my wife likes to remind me, indeed may have been the wisest thing to do and may not have even been wrong. Staying in the car brought me back home to my family. But I also know staying in the car didn't protect her in that moment. And what about her family? I didn't put my body on the line, and it preserved my story. But what about her story? How would it have read differently if not just me, but all those others driving down a busy street in broad daylight? Beloved, what if we all pulled over and enough of us got out of our cars? Could we together, in a display of beloved community, have rewritten that story? In our second gospel story today, I also wonder, beloved, how it would read if in a display of beloved community and neighborly love, the crowd witnessing Jesus and others sent off to be crucified pulled over and got out of the car and put their bodies on the line. I wonder what this gospel story would read like and sound like and feel like. Maybe something like this. And the soldiers took charge of Jesus. Or at least they tried to, but they couldn't. For the crowd had pressed in and formed a human chain around Jesus and around the others to be crucified. And fearing that they would have to crucify everyone if they were going to crucify anyone, the soldiers relented. Or maybe it would sound like this. Carrying his own cross, Jesus marched down to Golgotha, but along the way, the procession stopped as the crowd had laid down in the middle of the road. Beloved, imagine if the way of suffering that day had been transformed into the way of solidarity. And what if that solidarity was echoing with the greatest commandment of Jesus? Love one another. A love that showed up in the form of protection. Love one another. Protect one another. What would it look like if we, instead of being witnesses to injustice, smartphones in hand, what if we, beloved, refused to let it happen? I'm wondering if in the state of our world, if that's now where we are today. I'm wondering if it's where we've always been and if we've lied to ourselves thinking we can do it any other way. What if, when Jesus died for us, we refused to let him do it alone? What if instead of the unnamed victims on the cross, the crowd shouted their names, refusing to allow their identities to be lost to history, refusing to allow them to be lost at all? And look, beloved, I'm not saying this as someone who has the courage. I'm not on a high horse. If I'm on a horse at all, it's a pony, maybe a donkey fitting for Palm Sunday. But beloved, I think I'm saying this as someone who knows that they don't possess the courage. After all, I'm the guy who didn't get out of the car. But what if the cross, beloved, is an invitation into solidarity to pick it up, as Jesus says, and follow him as his disciples? And beloved, I'm not advocating that we passively offer ourselves up as fodder for the violence of empire, or as fodder for those who do violence on behalf of empire. That's not what I'm saying. Enough of y'all know me, and you know that's not what I'm saying. I actually also believe in self-defense. But I also believe that what this gospel story is showing us is that without the use of our bodies in our resistance, we're probably fodder for the empire already. I wonder how the story would read if those at Golgotha got out of the car in order to love one another and protect one another. Maybe it would sound like this. When the soldiers went to crucify Jesus, they couldn't, because they could not find a cross, because those in charge of carving them refused to use their hands to make any more instruments of execution. Or how about this? When the soldiers went to crucify Jesus and the others, the crosses fell apart, for they had been sabotaged by those in charge of carving them. Or even still, when the soldiers went to crucify Jesus, they couldn't. They couldn't, for they themselves refused to any longer be instruments of execution. Love one another. Protect one another. Beloved, we must never forget that evil runs on the fuel of our obedience, and that obedience runs on the fuel of our fear and indifference. And all that runs on the decisions that we make or don't make with our bodies. And in this gospel story, we see humans making very human decisions with their bodies, decisions rooted in fear, rooted in self. No, you're good. I thought for a second you were coming with one of those Janet Jackson microphones, and I got really excited. It's just a regular lapel. Okay, let's clip it on here. Okay, how's that? Can you guys hear me? All right. What was I saying? What if, beloved, we made the decision to get out of the car? How would this gospel story be reimagined and re-experienced? This gospel story is a brutally human story of survival. That's why we must remember that though some of the people who crucified Jesus happened to be Jewish, that the crucifixion of Jesus was not somehow an innate and exclusive evil of Jewish people, religiously, culturally, or ethnically. For the Jewish people didn't crucify Jesus, but human people crucified Jesus. This gospel story is rooted in the very human tendency to offer our obedience and to offer it out of fear. Pilate fearing the crowd fearing the soldiers fearing Rome and the religious elite fearing Jesus fearing none, but loving all, and using his body, not just to save us, but to show us through dying that perhaps there is a better way to live. Love one another. Protect one another. And I guess, beloved, that's what makes Jesus' entry triumphal. And what makes Palm Sunday a protest and a celebration. Not because Jesus ends up winning or ends up conquering, but that Jesus does not allow the way of empire to win him over and to conquer his spirit. I wonder if that's what makes Palm Sunday. I wonder if that makes this entry triumphal, not because Jesus triumphs, but because Jesus doesn't allow empire to triumph within him. Beloved, every time we refuse to allow the empire to change us, we win. Every time we refuse to allow the empire to change us, we are successful. As a matter of fact, the story goes of a lone protester standing outside of the White House during the Vietnam War. And this lone protester would stand outside of the White House day and night, rain, sleet, or snow, until finally, one night, a reporter asked him. The reporter said, "Sir, why are you standing here protesting day after day, night after night? Do you really think that you can change their mind?" And the reporter pointed to the White House. And it was at that time that the protester said, "Oh, sir, I'm sorry, but you've got it all wrong. I'm not standing here just so I can change them, but I'm standing here so that they never change me." Every time we refuse to allow the empire to change us, we win. Beloved, I wonder if that's what makes Jesus' entry triumphal. Not because he conquered Rome, not because he conquered evil, but because he refused to allow the empire and allow evil to conquer him. Oh, just turn to your neighbor and say, "Neighbor." Okay, so in the black preaching tradition, we do this thing called call and response. So when I call, you respond. And the quicker you respond, the quicker I preach. And the quicker we can get to lunch. So just turn to your neighbor and say, "Neighbor, don't let the evil win inside." Find another neighbor who believes what we just said and say, "Other neighbor, don't let the evil win inside." A wise preacher that I know once said it this way: we can't allow our enemy to become our enemy. We can't allow our enemy to become our enemy. Beloved, I wonder if that's the true triumph of this triumphal entry, of this parade, of this political satire. Jesus comes in to a crowd expecting a Lazarus-like miracle, and Jesus seems less concerned about performing another miracle. Jesus seems less concerned about performing another spectacle and more concerned with what is going to happen after. What's going to happen after the miracle? Jesus seems more concerned with what happens happens after the protest. Jesus seems more concerned with what is going to happen after the march. Jesus seems more concerned with what is going to happen after the demonstration. I wonder if that's the triumph, a Jesus that rides in to a spectacle, but that trains our eyes and our focus back to the everyday. As Jesus says, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it can bear no fruit. So Jesus takes our eyes away from the spectacle, away from the large crowds, and trains it back onto the everyday small death that we have to die in order for new life to arise. Anybody dying some small deaths? Right now, I'm dying a small death. A brother ain't been to Target in over a year. Yeah, please clap for that. Please. And you know what's funny? I don't miss it, you know. And one day, about a month ago, a preacher came on and said the Target, fast is over. And then I got a little excited, and I was like, but I don't even need nothing from there no more. But that's a small death. And there are small deaths that we're called to die every single day so that new life can arise. Pray for a brother. In solidarity with our Palestinian siblings, a brother has not been to Starbucks in almost 2 years, and a brother loves me some Starbucks. But that's a small death for new life to arise. And I don't always get it right. I don't always get it 100% right. I still read books. Let me get behind this when I say this. I still read books critiquing capitalism that I ordered from Amazon. Anybody else? Don't raise your hand, just blink. Don't raise your hand, just blink. All right? And I heard somebody say Romans. I patronize Romans, regularly in Octavia's bookshelf, but sometimes you just want it right away, right? But I wonder if that's the triumph. Jesus calling us away, not to say that the spectacle, the march, the parade is meaningless, but to draw us back to its true meaning, to what happens afterwards. And beloved, before I sit down, because I'm getting ready to close, and most times when a black preacher says they're getting ready to close, that means they got about 27 more minutes. But I'm really getting ready to close. I'll say this. The thing about Palm Sunday is that it's actually a perfect day to think about what happens after the march, to think about what happens after the protest. Because for all of the things that Palm Sunday is, one of the neglected things about Palm Sunday is that it is also an allusion to the Jewish festival of booths, or booths, or huts, right? So this festival was a remembrance back to the time when a wandering people in the desert found temporary shelter under huts and under these makeshift booths that were made out of, guess what? Palm branches. And so remembrance of a time back to when God provided protection and shelter to this wandering makeshift people out in the desert. So this festival and the waving of the palm branches should have sparked to mind that there is a God that offers protection and shelter in the wilderness. So what if Palm Sunday wasn't just an invitation to celebrate Jesus, but what if Palm Sunday was also an invitation to pick up our palm branches and instead of waving them at Jesus, start building some things with Jesus? What if we used our palm branches of celebration and adoration and used those palm branches to build protection and shelter out in this world? What if we waved our palm branches and used them to build protection and shelter for our immigrant siblings? What if we used our palm branches to build networks of organizing and advocacy for our siblings? What if we waved our palm branches and then used use them to build protection and legal aid networks so people could get bailed out of jail. What if we used our palm branches to build protection, safety, and shelter all over this world? So I guess the question of Palm Sunday is not, what are you waving, but what are you building? All right, look at your neighbor one more time and say, neighbor, what are you building? All right, y'all got it quick that time, so I won't make you do it again. What if Palm Sunday was an invitation not only to worship Jesus, but to build something with Jesus? To take those same branches and use them to organize and build shelter, safety, and protection for our neighbors and also for ourselves. To love one another and protect one another. In the name of the great healer Jesus, amen.